With a new character comes a new weapon, Vivid Notions, a niche catalyst designed around plunge damage and Veresa's unique gameplay. Due to the tailor-made conditional on the weapon, it's difficult to find another character who can make good use of it. In fact, there's only one other character who can use it just as well as Veresa, Barbara. Barbara is one of the few characters who can cancel her skill by pressing skill and jump at the same time. This still counts as casting her skill, which means it can trigger conditionals like the 4-piece Shiminawa, which drains your energy for a 50% damage buff, or the 4-piece Crimson Witch, which increases Barbara's pyro damage each time you cast your skill. With Vivid Notions, performing this skill cancel grants you the extra 40% crit damage buff towards your plunges. For visual indicators, a blue feather will appear after casting your skill, and if you properly skill cancel, the blue feather will also appear. A red feather will appear when you initiate a plunge, and both feathers will be consumed once you hit an enemy. If you do this tech properly, you're getting an extra 40% crit damage boost towards every plunge, on top of the 28 crit damage that every character gets by plunging. As a result, this gives Barbara one of the largest DPS gap that we've seen between the best and second best weapon. This gap is usually between 10 to 15% for other attack scaling characters. With Barbara, you can get up to 20% if you can get 1 to 2 crit ratio. But due to how difficult it is to only get crit rate rolls, the DPS gap will be around 15% with a more achievable 1 to 3 crit ratio. On top of this, the newly released plunge set Long Night's Oath outperforms her previous best set, Shiminawa's, by about 5%. This now makes her best plunge build 4-piece Long Night's Oath, with the main stats being EM, Hydro, and crit rate, with a substat priority of crit rate, crit damage, EM, and attack. If you're not using Vivid Notions, build crits close to 1 to 2 ratio as possible, with EM still being more valuable than attack. For talent priorities, you only need to level up your normals, with skill and burst being optional upgrades, but I recommend putting some levels into your burst in case you need an emergency heal. For constellations, Barbara's cons don't have much impact on this type of gameplay, so even a C0 will work. But before you start sending primos down the banner slot machine, I gotta address the two elephants in the room. By far, the biggest elephant in the room is how mechanically challenging it is to play this team. You need to press skill and jump at the same time before every plunge to get your extra crit damage buff. This is especially difficult on mobile devices. And in more optimal gameplay, you want to delay your plunge for a fraction of a second to perform a high plunge. If you mash your plunge right after jumping, you'll perform a low plunge, dealing 20% less damage. And then you can get up to 10% more damage with collision on the enemy hitbox. And then, right after you plunge, you want to dash cancel the landing animation into another skill jump. But if you don't press skill and jump at the same time, you'll either get a regular jump and don't get the extra crit damage buff, or you cast your skill, which locks you out of performing any more skill cancels for this rotation and the next rotation. On top of that, the extra Hydra application from your skill can prevent you from vaping. And if you want to be even more min-maxy, instead of cancelling your plunges with dashes, you can cancel with a normal attack to allow Xiangling to vape her Pyronado while also maintaining a Pyro Aura to vape your plunges. But for more normal people, I recommend sticking to the skilled jump plunges and later adding dash cancels once you're more comfortable with the playstyle. Eventually you can make this muscle memory, but until then you might struggle with the inputs or controlling your aerial movement. Maybe on the timing and sequencing of the inputs, it'll take some time to build your muscle memory because of how unique these inputs are. And if you're using the new plunge set, you can add a charge attack before your plunges to help build your stacks faster, but it'll only increase your DPS by up to 2%. Due to how easy it is to input the charge attack too slowly due to unfamiliarity, or by getting interrupted, you'll frequently turn that slight positive into a negative. So I generally recommend sticking to just skill jump spam, unless you're confident you won't mess up. The second elephant in the room is you don't have a whole lot of team building options. Shan Yun is mandatory to enable plunges and doubles Barbara's damage with her additive flat buff. And then you need someone to apply pyro fast enough to vape your plunges, and for that we have two options, Xiangling or Jean. Xiangling gives you a lot better content flexibility since her Pyronado is an unconditional spinning attack. It lets you vape all 8 of Barbara's plunges even if you make a few mistakes or get swatted out of the sky. But the downside is Xiangling will be married to Favonius Lance, and you'll have an extremely steep ER requirement at 280+. It can be lowered a bit if Shan Yun or Ben are on Favonius, but it'll still be very high. Jean has a much lower ER cost and doubles to help lower Shan Yun's ER requirements. Jean's biggest issue is you're locked into the Bennett Jean Sunfire combo to apply your pyro, which means circle impact. And then the maximum number of vapes you can get is 7 out of 8, with any mistakes that occur lowering the maximum number of vapes you'll be able to get. So pick Jean if you want a team with less ER and easier rotations, but your 4th slot can only be Bennett. And pick Xiangling if you want to min-max your team's damage at the cost of both higher ER and more difficult rotations. If you pick Xiangling, you got two options for your last slot. There's the standard Xiangling Bennett core that gives you some circle impact, but that's mostly a non-issue as long as you aren't fighting against spread out enemies or wave content, or you can use the newly released Iansan, but she comes with some additional nuances. With Iansan, you have to choose what kind of buff you want to give Barbara, Hydro VV or Hydro Scroll. Hydro VV gives you better single target damage, and because of how difficult it is to get Hydro VV on every enemy in multi-target and wave content, Hydro Scroll will offer better damage for those types of encounters. For Iansan's constellations, below C6, Iansan will have equal or less team damage than Bennett, but at C6 you can overflow Iansan's Night Soul to get the 25% damage buff to allow her to outperform Bennett, but getting C6 on her first banner is incredibly expensive, considering it will take you over 250 pulls on average to get 7 copies of her. And there's no guarantee or hard pity system in place for a specific 4-star, so you can pull over 250 times and get 0 copies of her, which will be very, very sad. So until we get another support pull, Iansan will be competing with Xiangling for who gets to marry Favonius Lance if you don't have enough to share for the two of them. But Iansan offers better content flexibility than Bennett. Iansan can deal with single target, multi-target, and wave content with some slight variations in your rotations. You go for Hydro VV against single target, and Hydro Scroll for anything else. Bennett doubles down on improving your single target DPS on a single target focused team, so you'll find Bennett to be a bit more clunky to play against mobile enemies or wave content. So if I had to pick one, I would choose Iansan to free up Bennett for your other team. But if you don't need Bennett on your other team, then feel free to pick either Bennett or Iansan with Barbara. And this wraps up my Plunge Barbara guide. This team is really fun to play, especially if you've never tried a Plunge team before. It has a good range of skill expression to spice up your gameplay, as long as pressing multiple buttons simultaneously isn't a deal breaker for you. But if it isn't, you can get some pretty insane numbers in regular gameplay. So if you have both Vivid Notions and Shan Yun, seriously give this team a try. If you have just Shan Yun, numbers won't be as high, but it's still pretty fun to play. Thank you for watching the video, give a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. If you have any opinions or feedback, please comment down below. I'm still new to content creation, so any feedback will be greatly appreciated. With that, I hope you have a wonderful day, night, wherever you are, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye!